Greetings, you little guzzlers. So, what we're going to do today is a bit more bread making, but just making ordinary bread is a bit boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some Viking rye bread. Now, one of the problems with Vikings is that they never wrote anything down, well certainly never wrote recipes down, and so we have no idea how they made certain things. But we do have archaeological evidence that shows us what they ate, kind of meals they would have had. We know definitely they had bread. They made loaves, and so based on all the evidence, we know their prime flour or their prime grain was rye, and they certainly ground it into like flour. So we're going to create a rye loaf. Okay, so to do that, let's just get the bowl out of the way. We're going to use 200 grams of rye flour and 200 grams of bread flour. Now you could use wholemeal or you could just use strong white like I've got here. Okay, the only other ingredients is a tablespoon of honey. Now the Vikings used to use honey a lot, and they use it to sweeten things and so on. So we're going to use a tablespoon of honey, half a teaspoon of salt, and then, well, this is where it differs from a Viking loaf. We're going to use yeast. Now, yeast wasn't used in bread making back then. Okay, yeast was introduced into bread making a lot later, but it's not true that they didn't add some kind of leavening agent, because sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. So sometimes they made like your unleavened flatbreads, and sometimes they added something known as antler salt. Now antler salt was from antlers, reindeer. They would take the antlers, sort of somehow it managed to get the oil out, probably by heating it up, and that would leave behind ammonium carbonate basically, from which they sort of made a rudimentary type baking soda. So they did raise their dough a bit, but we're going to use yeast. Okay, so that's what you're going to need. We'll start making in a second.